I'm Jeremy Counseller, Dean of Baylor Law School, and welcome to Counselor's Corner. My guest today is second-year Baylor Law student Tom Malaspina. Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Dean Counselor. I'm happy to be here.
Good. You have had a lot of success in law school, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But your journey to Baylor Law School was not exactly a straight line free from all adversity or challenge. So if you would, share that journey with us, Tom.
Yeah, sure. So as you put it, it wasn't a straight line. I think a lot of people wish it would be. In my case, it wasn't. I graduated in 2022 from TCU, which not necessarily good to mention at Baylor, but I've been welcomed here. And that's true especially of my path. When admissions came to me and I got to know them very well, they really helped me through this process. I was one of the non-traditional students who tried to apply to every quarter, tried to get every opportunity available to me. I applied a total of 5 times to get in here. Was successful on my 5th. So third time's a charm is no longer my phrase. It's 5th time's a charm.
You know, on a number of occasions, I've talked to lawyers and judges who've got 20, 30, 40 years experience and asked the question, what do you think is the most important characteristic of a good lawyer? And top on their list, and often the number one thing, is resilience, the ability to kind of take a licking and keep on ticking. And,
right.
And that's what you're talking about. How has that, and you mentioned this, but how has that helped you once you were in law school and now that you're going through law school?
Yeah, the clearest example comes from basically the idea that you have to have an internal reason. You've got to have a reason that keeps you going long after you have no reason to, because you will be in the library and you will question what you did. Why did I do this? Nobody forced me to do this. I'm paying for this. This is voluntary. You know, why did I do this? And I had that. Heck, I've had it approaching exams almost every time. But every single time, my rationale of wanting to serve in the Army JAG Corps beats out any of those fears. And so whenever that comes up, whenever I think, I can just stop. This is, there's a way out. I can send in my resignation letter, as it were. But when you have something that keeps you going, you can do it. And that's what I think the exams is what I would say. You have to apply resiliency to.
I'll have you know that I never once had a moment of doubt in law school. No, I'm kidding. Mine was, wouldn't it be nice to be a history teacher? That was just a nice little life, summers off. But your internal reason, your why, is you want to serve your country in the JAG Corps.
That's right, yes, sir.
Talk about what the JAG Corps is, just generally, and what you hope to do after law school. Sure.
So the JAG Corps is the Army lawyers. Army. JAG has a branch has a division in every branch. There, you could go Coast Guard, Navy, Marines even have their own. I want to go Army. My grandfather was in the Army. My other grandfather, he was in the Air Force, so I'm sure he doesn't really like that, but had to pick one. They're the military lawyers. When commanding officers need advice on rules of engagement or administrative law or dealing with local politics or base politics, things like that, they come seek your advice. You advise them on rules of engagement, on procurement of supplies, basically everything you might need on the back end. And also your traditional, hey, the corporal over here went out, had some problems in town, got arrested. You have to deal with that. So you're sort of a jack of all trades.
That's a good why. Talk about, because my understanding is you're not currently in the Army. So we do have some students who have been in the Army. They remain in the Army or another branch of the military while they're in law school. And then they go back into their new role in the JAG Corps. You're going to go a different route, which is also quite common. Talk about what that process is after you graduate law school.
Yeah, so it's actually quite interesting. The process starts before I graduate. Next fall, I'll have to apply for the commission. I'll start in the reserves.
When you say commission?
So the application process, you start as an officer. And so being an officer in the Army, you're required to apply for a commission, essentially for these roles. If you have Army doctors, Army lawyers, Army chaplains. It's a different route. You have your traditional combat officers, infantry officers, then you have your specialists, essentially, if you will, lawyers, doctors, chaplains. The application requires you to go through background checks, transcripts, pretty much A to Z, everything you've ever done. Have you sneezed at this time of the year? Have you tripped over a rock? Have you jaywalked before? It's kind of an all-intensive look into who you are. Then you do an interview with a field screening officer. Mine will be attached to Fort Cavazos, given our proximity here in Waco. But that process begins prior to graduation. It is a few months, I would say, of applications, statements, essays, pretty traditional for an application. And then if you're successful on that front, you are able to commission. And then the work post-law school starts.
You've talked about your path to Baylor Law School and what you want to do after law school. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things you do in law school.
Sure.
You are one of our student ambassadors.
Yes, that's right.
So tell us about what it means to be a student ambassador.
Well, like we were talking about earlier, I had being in this role now feels strange. I'll tell you, I've done 50 plus tours, had some very wonderful opportunities to meet great people. And it's a really humbling experience because I get to see so many impressive people, many of whom are admitted and then eventually become my colleagues. And so it's really nice to have that influence to say, look, let me take you around the school. Let's talk. You can stay your professional self.
Well, you're very good at it. I mean, I
appreciate that.
We put a lot of VIPs, when it's because it's not just students, right?
That's
Sometimes
right.
it's alumni, and they come and we're like, let's get Tom in there to give him a good, and then we get a lot of compliments about you when they are done. So
I appreciate that.
We appreciate all that you do. Okay, something else that you do is you volunteer in our Veterans Clinic.
I do. Yes.
Talk about what our Veterans Clinic does and some of the things that students get to do in the Veterans Clinic.
Yeah, this was arguably the crown jewel in why I wanted to come to Baylor. I knew for a fact prior to applying to any law school that I really wanted to serve. I didn't know what that was going to look like yet. Found the JAG Corps prior to my applications here and ran with it. And when I found that Baylor had not only a veterans clinic, but a highly developed, highly successful veterans clinic, that thrilled me. And so, of course, I got involved on day one. And what it looks like is a collection of us students. We go to the Veterans One-Stop Center over there on LaSalle, and we have what's called legal seminars. It's basically we sit in a room, and all of the directors and participants will sit out they've got this very large kitchen area and cafeteria area. They'll sit out and fill out an intake form. They'll bring it back, say, hey, looks like we have an estate planning issue. Would anybody like to take this one? Or we've got a divorce situation or a damage to a vehicle, things like that. And what we do as students, obviously not trying to disbar ourselves before we even get the chance to be barred, we don't give legal advice, but we are the fact finders. We sit down with them. So tell me what happened. I understand you're in for this issue. Tell me a little bit about that. I always like to start, if they're comfortable, by asking them about their service. And a lot of them have very cool stories. One man that I talked to specifically was on, I believe, he was attached to 5th Group, I believe, the 5th Fleet for 17 years. And that was a great story to talk about. And again, that clinic helps people who need it. And the veterans have helped us more than we know. I certainly don't ever want that to be a back thought in my mind. And so helping them through these issues, if we can be that support for them, that's exactly where I'm going to be.
Yeah. What you said touches upon some things that I think we emphasize here at Baylor Law School, which is, one, the practice of law is a people profession.
That's right.
At the end of the day, the core of what we do is service.
That's right.
We serve people. And we serve them for money typically, but we try to emphasize through the veterans clinics and other programs that we have that this is about service, so you better get used to it and you might as well get started.
You're right.
I want to point out something that's sort of another kudos to you. You made a mock trial team recently.
did.
Tell me about that.
So the mock trial team was another part of why I wanted to come here. But yeah, the application process for mock trial consisted of getting a packet, and we had to prepare a 5-minute opening statement. We didn't have to get through all the facts. It was quite extensive, but we set up for a time, and everybody in 5-minute intervals from about 3 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. went in and delivered their 5-minute speech. All the coaches were in there, and they essentially picked their favorites. Who do you think delivered their best emotional line, and who had a good hook? Things along those lines. Yeah. And then we were notified which teams we made.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a great experience with Professor Tilley. I mean, he is a long history. He's new here at Baylor, but he has a long history of success and interscholastic competition coaching. One of the things that you're right to point out, our law school is just tremendously successful when it comes to competitions and championships. But one of the things that I think that I'm really proud of is we try to involve as many students as we can in our interscholastic competition teams because we think it's so important for their education.
Yeah, and to that point, by the way, about how Baylor emphasizes those skills, it's required as part of the curriculum too. The moot court competition, the intrascholastic competition is part of LARC 3. That's a great hands-on experience to what advocacy can be like. Simulating those teams. Well, not really simulating. You're doing the work with the student judges, the barristers. That is a really great entry point for people to, like you said, let's get their feet in the water. Yeah. Let's see if this is something I want to do. Experience those advocacy teams. It's pretty impressive.
There are so many opportunities for advocacy here. Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to the lightning round.
Oh boy,
your answers have to be short. If you could live anywhere in the world for a year, where would it be and why?
I would live in Dubrovnik, Croatia. My family is Croatian on my mother's side, and that is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been in. I was fortunate enough to visit there. I'd live there.
If you could instantly master one hobby or sport, what would it be?
Oh, one hobby or sport.
Instantly master.
Hockey. I played hockey my whole life. I would have to say that.
Did you grow up someplace cold?
No, not particularly. I grew up on the West Coast in California, and we had a lot of emphasis on hockey out there. We had a professional team, and there's 3 in the state. Just seemed to be the sport I gravitated towards.
Okay. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Night owl, without a doubt. I do not like getting up for early classes and civil procedure at 8 a.m. for my first ever class. That was...
See, I'm a morning person.
That was, I know that.
Favorite restaurant in Waco?
DeCampley, the Italian place, absolutely.
Okay. If you could have any animal as a pet, not a cat or a dog or a fish, but what would you pick?
Oh, man. That's a really good one. I don't know. Because I love dogs. I mean, that would be my answer. But if I have to be...
You can have the dog, too.
I can't... Oh, in addition to?
Yeah.
Okay. Man, I really don't know. Does it have to be something that's practical? Or can this be truly out of the box?
Tom?
I would say kangaroo, probably.
That's a good answer.
I would say a kangaroo.
It took you a while to get there.
Yeah,
that's a good answer.
I was trying to think about the practicalities of it, and I got to get out of my head on that front and just say, yeah, that'd be pretty fun to have him hop around.
Okay. I understand you have some questions for me. A question or questions?
I do, yeah. So one of the major questions I'd like to know, if you could have a conversation with any legal mind from history, living or dead, what question would you ask them? Anybody. And they had to be truthful with you. What would you ask them?
Oh, man. That is a good question. I'm not sure I'm going to have a good answer to it.
I took my time with the kangaroo, so you can go ahead.
Well, I mean, Thurgood Marshall comes to mind.
Right.
I've always I admire his writing, and I'd want to talk to him about the transition from being a lawyer who had just tremendous achievements to then being an associate justice on the Supreme Court. I would be really interested to hear him. Did you have another question?
I did. Okay. That one was just off the top of my head. The very meteoric rise that you've had here as a meteoric
rise.
Scripted. No. from being, the coveted civil procedure professor, which you still retain to this day, and now taking over from the longest serving dean at any law school in the country, how do you feel that's going as far as your procedure now, not procedure, your process now being dean? A lot of presidents talk about their first 100 days. What's your first 100 days been like?
I don't know that I would call my rise meteoric. I've been here for almost 22 years. I think meteors move more quickly than that. But
maybe.
I think it's going well. But, it's one of those things like,
Sure.
People are like, I don't know if I agree with that. But I have – the thing I always say when people ask me how's it going is this job has such a variety of different things that you do. I mean, right now I'm talking to you on a podcast. There's a day where I'm greeting a delegation of judges from a foreign country to the welcoming them to the law school. A lot of it's looking at policy and all sorts of different things, meeting with faculty, having faculty meetings. So there's such a tremendous variety of tasks and responsibilities that you will never be bored.
Sure.
I mean, it is. I will say one big takeaway is the job is not boring.
Right.
And I really appreciate that about the job. There's some things that we've done in the first 6 months that I'm really proud of, related to student scholarship funding and things like that I'm really proud of, and I think make a big difference in the lives of some of our students. So that's kind of where I'm feeling right now. But also, I'm like you. There are other things I want us to achieve and and get to. So it's a balance of appreciating kind of the moment and then also looking to the horizon a little bit.
I'll echo what the students have been saying about you, something maybe you haven't heard, or I'm sure you have in some way.
This flattery will get you everywhere, Tom.
Yeah, I hope so. That's the goal. A lot of people, especially what you just mentioned about the scholarship initiative, that changed a lot of lives. Yeah. I mean, Baylor, we have a very intense school. Yeah. I often say to people who come in for tours, this is the Marine Corps of Law School. You have to be ready for this. Yeah. This is not your traditional first year's here, second year is, what's the tradition? First year they work you, second year they work you harder, third year they bore you, something along those lines, the traditional downplay of law school. We accelerate.
Well, one thing that you said, I mean, in terms of the way it's rigorous, and you said Marine Corps of Law Schools. There was a publication a number of years ago who called us that. I think it's important to understand why, because what we want is for students to be ready for the rigors of the profession.
Absolutely.
And so I really want students to feel like they're challenged in law school, but what we're all aiming at, and this is my faculty and staff colleagues, 2, 3, 4 years out of law school, we want them to look back and say, I was really well prepared for the practice. And so that's what we're aiming at, an education that kind of reflects the natures of the profession.
Well, and I think it's, again, I don't have any real-world experience just yet in terms of how these lessons apply, but I can already see the difference in friends of mine who go to other law schools. Certainly won't tell what schools those are, but they're saying, oh, you do moot court? That's required? You have to prepare your own brief? What do you mean you have 5 iterations of your writing class before you then get to practice court where you have more?
Yeah.
I only had 1 semester of it, and it was kind of a pass-fail grade. I don't know, maybe I wrote a brief or 2. The emphasis that Baylor places on these practical skills is exactly why Baylor is at the forefront of preparing those real-world lawyers. You can learn anything in academia to the, theoretical sense. How exactly does that apply? And especially in a profession like ours where we are built on our reputations, our names. How do we carry ourselves? We're in courtrooms a lot of the time. We're negotiating deals. If you don't know how to do those things, but I know the theory of negotiation because of this textbook entry I read. If you can't move it from the textbook to the real world, I would argue it's not helpful. Yeah. And Baylor does an excellent job of being the bridge between those two things. We have excellent textbooks. We have excellent professors, but they teach you how to apply it. And I think that's the piece that entices so many people to come to Baylor in the first place. They want to be leaders in their industry. And to do that, you have to have that capability. And Baylor prepares you really well to do that.
Well, I hope Baylor continues to prepare you well for serving our country in the JAG, Army JAG. And thanks for representing us well in all that you do for us here at the law school. Thanks so much,
Thanks
Tom.
for having me.
Appreciate you.